This instructional video is going to cover generating a TUS report using Advanced Eurotherm's temperature survey report software. Now, assuming you've gone to our website, Eurotherm.com/TUS software, and have downloaded the software, we're going to assume that you're opening this up for the very first time. So whether you click the icon on your desktop or underneath your start menu, when you open it up, you're going to be presented with a box that says no valid license found. The TUS software is a per PC license, meaning it's one license per PC. And unless you have a USB key from us or a license file, you'll be presented with this file or this pop-up every time you start the software. Despite the fact you don't have a license, this doesn't mean that you can't go through and play around with the software. The only thing you can't do is actually generate the report. But let's say that you want to go through, you want to generate the report. How do you go about doing so? Well, we need you to generate an activation.dat file that we can then in turn provide you with a license file. So on the left hand side here, we've got a settings tab. If you click on that, you'll be presented with the settings tab, and on the right hand side you have a little button that's called license. When you click on that, you'll notice that we have no license, but then we've got two buttons below it, close and activate. When we click on activate, we'll be provided with the activation screen. On the screen, we've got a couple different entries we can put in. We ask that you fill this out as completely as possible, with the exception of the license ID. When you're done filling out your information, simply click on the OK button, and an activation.dat file will be saved underneath your Documents and Settings folder. So let's go to Start menu, Documents, Eurotherm, and TUS. There's a full UNC path there. You'll notice that we do have an activation.dat file. Simply take that file, email it to basically your support at eurotherm.co.uk if you're located outside of North America. If you are located within North America, please email your activation.dat file to me, which is joe.clark@advances.com. So you've sent that activation file off and you've received a demo license back from us. Once you get that demo license, which I have here on my desktop, go back to that folder that we talked about previously and simply place the license.dat file in that folder. If you're currently open in TUS, close it out, open it back up, and now you'll notice that we no longer get that message. And a matter of fact, you can always go back, go to Settings, go to License, and notice that you do have a license activation. So we're going to quickly go through just some of the menus here and just kind of talk about some of the key points. If I happen to skip over some of the other tabs in here, it's most likely that it's really not pertinent for this particular instructional video. So being that we're in the Settings tab, this is what I always recommend to start off with first before you actually even get into the software, before you even get into the actual generation of the profile itself. The first tab is Company Details. This is regarding essentially who the license is activated or registered under. You do have two header lines, and this information will pop up on the very front page of the report. Next, you have Localization. Self-explanatory, but you get to choose what language, temperature units, the date format, time format, and the precision. Logo Management gives you the ability to place logos on the first page as well as any continual page. And then on the last tab here underneath Profiles, this is unique because this gives you the ability to save a profile once you've already gone through generating the template that you want. You can save the profile and then load this at another time. So although generating a profile for the first time may take 15 to 20, 25 minutes to do, once it's done, the next interval that you run the survey, all you simply need to do is load that profile, choose what data you want to look at for the survey, and then generate a report, which may take 2 to 3 minutes. That's the Settings tab. Very simple, very straightforward. Once you have this set up, I would then recommend going to the Start. So now what we're looking at is the welcome data entry screen. I'm going to go ahead and maximize this. This is the data entry screen. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Everything that you see on this screen needs to be reported for an AMS 2750E survey report. The equipment data pertains to the survey, pertains to the furnace that you're doing the survey on. Clicking on the ellipse button will allow you to go in here and make changes. You can have multiple class furnaces. Again, this is where you go in and make the changes as you see necessary. Customer data. If you're the one that owns the survey software and you're doing this for yourself, you'd obviously just put your own information in here. Otherwise, if you're doing these surveys for another third party, that's where their information would go. The appliance ID and manufacturer, etc. This all pertains to the furnace that you're doing the survey on. We talked about profiles earlier, so if we wanted to load another profile, simply click on the profile we want to load, click the load button, and you notice that once it goes through, it says that it was successfully loaded. And you also notice that I've got all the information that I had previously set up is loaded as well. That being said, we'll continue with this template that I created not too long ago. A couple other things I do want to point out on the screen. Survey information. You do have the ability to switch this from being auto to a manual failed or pass. The only reason why you might need to do that is in the event that the software incorrectly identifies the result to be a fail when it actually was a pass, and vice versa. That's when you might need to do it. Very slim chances that you will need to do it, but in the event that it does, that's where you can change it. You'll notice that the next survey due date is set up exactly 30 days from the day that we generate this report. That's by default. If your surveys are done on a quarterly basis, simply click on the calendar to change exactly what date the next survey is due. Once you're done filling out this screen, simply click on the next step, and now we're going to look at taking data from the review database. So right here we've got, we're telling it where we want to look for our default database. Right now we're going to be looking at a database called sampledb.erv. With data source 1 connected or selected, we're going to click on the connect button. It's going to pop up with a message saying that we have successfully connected to that database. Click OK, and then underneath the select instrument name, we can choose what recorder we're looking at. For this example, I'm looking at a recorder that's happened to be named Survey Recorder 2. Because you can have up to 12 groups in the recorder, you need to select what group that you're looking at. For this example, we only have one group. And then you need to choose, in terms of doing your survey, what type of data you want to look at. Do you want to look at it by time period or by batch? Now, if you are running a survey with a recorder that has batch capability, it is the much more preferred method for running these surveys. When you do a survey by batch, you're essentially putting a start and stop flag on a recording interval, meaning it takes a lot of the guesswork out in terms of trying to remember when you started or stopped that particular survey. When I choose data by batch, I have a drop-down field where I can then choose my batch. Now this example, there's only one shown here. However, keep in mind that you'll likely have multiple batch IDs listed here. When I do select the batch that I want to look at, you'll notice at the very bottom underneath the start and end time, those dates will change accordingly, as they just have, based on when I actually press the start and stop of the batch. Once I'm done with this, I click on the next step. And now this is where I want to look at the channel setup. This is the load thermocouples as well as the control thermocouples. Now, again, it's going to pick up this information automatically based on the database. What I mean by that, it's going to pick up the recorder name, what group, and how many thermocouples or how many inputs are shown within the database. Now, just because it says we have available 12 channels doesn't necessarily mean we did a 12 thermocouple or 12-point survey. For this example, we actually used 9 points. So clicking on the number of thermocouples, that drop down, we can choose the number 9 and it'll automatically pick the first 9 thermocouples listed in your recorder. They are listed numerically. The channel names are picked directly from the recorder, so whatever the channels are named in the recorder is what they'll be named here. The ANIN1 and so on and so forth stands for analog input. And then underneath serial numbers, this is where you need to put in the specific serial number for the thermocouple wire that you have. It's as simple as double clicking the serial number and then putting whatever the value is. Same concept with control channels. This is going to be your load. I'm sorry, not going to be your load. This will be your furnace temperature TC going into your temperature controller. This can be a read transmit from that temperature controller, or this could be from a secondary sensor that's located no more than 0.38 inches from the original sensor. Again, you should really only have maybe one sensor coming in here per zone. And again, for this example, I'm not really using any, but you can imagine this is where that thermocouple would be. When you're done setting this up, click on Next. Okay, so in this point, this is where we're going about setting up the specific set points. Whether you're running a single set point or multi-set point survey, this is where you would set that up. For this example, I am running a 3 set point survey. So from the number of sets set point drop down, I select the number 3. And I double click and manually adjust what my set points are for each one. When I type in 1000, 1600, and 2200, the tolerance will automatically be filled in based on what I put in the equipment data box. Once we're done doing that, we can go on to the next step. This is the detailed data entry page. You'll notice we've got about 6 tabs going across. And again, similar to the welcome data entry, this is just information, again, that needs to be indicated and reported within the TUS report. So on this page, we've got test instrument and then appliance instrumentation. The test instrument is going to be the recorder that's collecting the data. So I'm using a 6100A data recorder. And then the appliance instrumentation, I've got a 3216 high limit as well as a 3508 temperature controller. Setup notes, anything in particular that you want to have noted in the report, this is where you would add it. For this example, I do not have any setup notes. We have TC correction factors as well as recorder correction factors. Again, the TC correction factors are going to be provided to you from the manufacturer of the thermocouple wire you're purchasing. The recorder correction factors are going to come from the calibration lab that did a calibration on your survey recorder. Keep in mind for this example, I am not using any correction factors for the recorder, but I am using correction factors for the thermocouple wire. I do want to point out what this box means up here where it says consider TC correction factors. The consider TC correction factors means if you're taking data from the recorder, you have the ability to apply these settings or not to apply them. Now, if you're, you might ask the question, well, why would I want to have them listed here and then not apply them? Well, in our 6100 series recorders, we actually have the ability to apply these offsets to the live data and record them that way. So if you're collecting that data with the corrected values and then you were to reapply the correction factors, your data would actually be incorrect. So despite the fact that you're doing the correction factors live in the recorder, you still have to list them in the software, but then choose not to utilize these correction factors. Underneath TC locations, this is just an area where you can add in a CAD drawing, a illustration, a JPEG file, whatever it may be of the particular furnace. You can indicate what shape it is, the dimensions, as well as where all the load thermocouples are located. Lastly, you have engineering comments, and this is primarily used for anything that relates to the equipment on the furnace. For example, if you made any, if there's any controller offsets or anything along those lines, that's where you can add that information here. Again, for this example, I'm not using anything. When you click on Next, you're presented with the stability criteria. In this location, we have a box called General. We have a monitoring threshold of 30 degrees and a stable measurement period of 30 minutes. The monitoring threshold indicates how much prior to reaching set point do you want to show. The larger that number is, the more of the ramp up you will show, and this is really based on preference. Whereas the stable measurement period needs to be at least 30 minutes based on AMS 2750E. If you do want to increase that, however, you can always change that number by either typing in a value or clicking on the up button. Underneath set point criteria, you have your 3 set points that we listed earlier, automatically indicated here. But then underneath criteria type, we have a couple different options. Now this is actually kind of an important part of the software. You've got real time, elapsed time, and then analysis time. Primarily what I use and what most customers use are either real time or analysis time. With real time, you indicate exactly when during each set point they were the most stable. So for example, if I left it on real time, I would say set point number 1 was deemed stable at 5:30 p.m. as such. So real time means that you are indicating exactly when the set point was deemed as being stable, which is perfectly fine. And in fact, I think majority of the customers tend to do it this way. However, a nice feature of the TUS software is that we also have analysis time. When you choose analysis time, the first thing you're going to notice is that the temp are deemed stable at disappears. The reason why it does that is because the software is going to go through and look at each individual set point, and based off a certain number of samples, it's going to try to determine when the most stable measurement period is. The last step, once I click next, is regarding the printing part of it. First thing to look at the very bottom here is items to print. By default, you're going to have summary and summary only. I would suggest selecting the other 3 points, which are data, set point trends, and summary trend. Now, when you choose to print either one of these trends, you do need to go to the trend setup and make sure that you have each set point as well as the number of thermocouples selected. The easiest thing to do is simply click select all. Go back to your printing tab. Another thing I want to point out is that you do have the ability to send the output of the report directly to a printer. However, I suggest that you use the PDF instead. That way you can just output to a PDF file, save it, and then of course print it at a later time. Underneath data, there are print samples for, and by default that is every 2 minutes. That is an AMS 2750 requirement. However, if you want to increase that interval from 2 minutes to 1 minute, you can simply change it there. Clicking on Generate Report will generate a serialized report based off the date time, and that will put it into the folder called Reports, which is located within your TUS folder. For this example, we're just going to generate a preview which doesn't uniquely serialize the report, just gives you what the report's going to generate. It takes roughly 10 to 15 seconds to connect to the database, run the report. But what you'll notice that after those 10-15 seconds, a report will be generated. So let's shrink this down a little bit in size and kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here. This is the first page. We've got our logo at the very top, as well as the customer information pertaining to the furnace, the recorder that did the survey, as well as did we pass or fail. Page number 2 shows the equipment classes, gives you a general summary of the readings, and then of course the declaration part where you need to have the customer sign off on the report. Because we chose to print additional information, you see that we also have setup notes as well as information on the furnace, the thermocouples used, as well as the serial numbers, any of the recorder or thermocouple correction factors. We also have the thermocouple locations, and this is what we talked about earlier. So if you had an image, this gives you a good example of how you could use that image to kind of illustrate where all the thermocouples are located. Going on, we also have the basically the survey temperatures during the measurement period. We also have the max difference across survey thermocouples, the maximum, minimum overshoot, undershoot. And then as we go down on page 7, you notice that we have a lot of gray italicized data. The gray italicized data means that it's not stable data. We did not consider this for the stable measurement period. It's indicated there because it was part of our batch, however. So you notice that it starts at about 4:30 in the afternoon, but it wasn't until roughly 6:47 that we started our stable measurement period. So for every 2 minutes during 6:47 on, we're going to have a reading of what we had during that 30 minutes. Finishing up at 7:17, we have our 30 minutes of data. And we can go on to set point number 2. Same concept applies. The gray italicized data means that's non-stable. The black non-italicized data means that it is stable. And lastly, we do this for set point number 3 as well. Once we've gone through all the individual set points, now we can look at the trends. This is trend for set point number 1, which is 1,000 degrees. And as you can see here, we've got 3 asterisks going across. The first asterisk indicates when the first thermocouple crosses the minimum tolerance. The second asterisk indicates the start of the stable measurement period, and the last asterisk indicates when the stop of the stable measurement period. This gives you kind of a good overall view of what happened during the run. It does show all the thermocouples coming up to temperature, a slight overshoot, as well as a stabilization period. And you can see why the software chose to pick the later period, because when we look a little bit back, maybe 30 to 45 minutes, we still have some thermocouples coming up to temperature. That's for set point number 1. So it's going to repeat this for set point number 2, as well as set point number 3. Once you go through all 3 set points, we're then provided with a summary trend. The summary trend basically is the complete batch that you ran. So obviously we ran for close to about 45 minutes before we really ramped up the temperature. We have our first set point, followed by our second set point, and then our third set point. And this is also useful for determining exactly when we took that stable measurement period. As you can see, we waited a little bit further on in the set point to have the most stable measurement period. This also kind of gives a good indication for set point number 3, for example. If we look back at that trend, we can see that we've got a little bit of a decline on thermocouple number 3. And the software is going to deem this as a pass because for the most part during this period it is stable, but it doesn't take into consideration that we do have some declining trends, which is not necessarily considered stable based on AMS 2750 standards. What's useful about this summary, however, is that anybody reviewing this could look at this particular trend, compare it against this trend, and see that we still have some more data going on after that. And basically, if we looked at data after this point, we may be able to see that thermocouple number 3 may have actually dropped below the thresh point. So it kind of would raise some questions whether or not this is actually a stable survey or not. But that is basically the generating the report in a nutshell. Again, once you're done using this, you can choose to print, you can just discard, and that's really about it. Anything that you've made change-wise, when you close out, it's going to ask you if you want to save. I'm not sure if I actually made any changes, but apparently I did, so it's going to ask if I want to save it. I can choose yes or no, and the next time I open up the report, I'll be able to choose that profile, choose the batch, generate report, and I've got a report in about 2 to 3 minutes.